I'm Leon-Guerrero with the Guam Citizens for Public Accountability. I'm sitting here with a sense of deja vu because the last time I testified at a budget hearing was in 2016. And in 2016, I sat before a group of senators and talked about the possibility that we would be seeing major impacts on government revenues as a result of the Trump tax cuts that were being floated around in Congress. And this legislature, the 34th didn't pay any attention. And as a result, they were forced to go back to the people of Guam, reach in our pockets, and take another 25% out of our disposable income. And then they went ahead and passed the fuel tax, which further restricted our disposable income. My disposable income in the last 2 years has gone down by 34%. It's affected every aspect of my life. I come to town twice a week instead of every day, and I've made a number of other changes. Now, the reason I bring this up is this legislature is contemplating a budget that's very similar to the budget of Albuquerque, New Mexico. 565,000 people, and they have a budget that's 15 million, proposed budget, 15 million more than the budget being proposed here before the legislature. But there are some differences. Guam has a gross domestic product of 5.1 million. Albuquerque, New Mexico has a gross domestic product of 38 million. Guam has 44,662 households to spread the budget load across. Albuquerque, New Mexico has 121,000 households to spread their city budget load across. Here on Guam, the per household budget load, based on what's proposed, is $22,000 per household. The budget load in Albuquerque, New Mexico is $4,100. You see, this is the policy-making body. This is the check-writing body. But you're not acting as though you're the policymakers. You're not acting as though you're physically responsible people, because all of you campaigned with the promise that you were going to streamline the government, you were going to put in a sense of financial responsibility and accountability. But we're not seeing that. And the budget that's laying on this table right now before you is proof of that. If you were the policymakers, you would look at the people of Guam. You would see how the people of Guam are suffering, and you would say, what can we do to ease their burden? What steps can we make to reduce the cost of government? And it's a very important decision to make, and I'll tell you why. I know you guys don't watch the news, but just as in 2016 when I was pointing out economic factors that affected Guam around the world, we have a series of events taking place in Asia as the economy of Asia is grinding down. We have country after country going into negative growth. We have thousands of companies across Asia that are slowing down and laying off people. And the three I highlight specifically are Japan, South Korea, and China. Now you think, what do Japan, South Korea, and China have to do with Guam? Well, that's where the bulk of our tourists come from. And right now, when you look at the carnage taking place on Wall Street, we were down over 1,000 points today, the largest single drop in history. We're seeing that the economic factors outside our island are going to be affecting our island's revenues sooner than later. But instead of taking a cautious approach like we citizens are forced to do, we don't see any effort whatsoever to rein in government spending. I mean, even the speaker came up here and asked for more money. Former speaker came up here and asked for more money. Every single department of government of Guam is asking for more money than before. And when we look at the fact that at the start of the Calvo administration, we were under $500 million. In 10 years, we're now at $1 billion. Have we seen any improvement in government services at the people level? I honestly can't say I have. But still, we persist with this myth that, $900 million is doable. We can afford that. I remember when the budget hit $1 billion in Hawaii, and there was just people wringing their hands. And at the time the budget hit in Hawaii, it was in the 80s, and we had 1.5 million people. Well, here we are, 164,000 people, of which over 100,000 do not work. So we are carrying the entire economy on the backs of 65,000 people, many of whom have multiple jobs. Their quality of life sucks because they have multiple jobs, and the majority of them worry how they're going to make ends meet from paycheck to paycheck, myself included, because I am a senior citizen living on a fixed income, and over the past 2 years, my disposable income has dropped by 1/3. And now we're hearing the government talking about growing. We're hearing pay raises. We're seeing pay raises, massive pay raises, retroactive pay raises. I think there's even a line item in BBMR to retroactively compensate someone. Now we see there's line item in the budget to do another pay study. You know, and then we look at every single board and commission, and every single board and commission, every new person that came on started at step 13. So we have people starting, instead of starting at step 1 when they go onto a board and commission at 75 or 80,000, they're starting at 160. And in the meantime, you guys are talking about raising all the rates and fees for government of Guam because they haven't been raised in years. Well, what about the salaries for the people who pay the taxes? They haven't been raised in years either. So if you guys are the people's representatives, you need to start acting like the people's representatives. And the first thing you do is you draw a line in the sand and say, based on realistic projections. And we have to look at realistic projections because right now the government of Guam is doing what they've always done and follow unrealistic projections. That's why we have a $100 million deficit. That's why, over the past few years, departments get shorted their funds because we've used unrealistic expectations. We know that there's a better than 60% chance that the tourist economy is going to slow down. We know with 80% probability that the federal government is going to be cutting programs. So when they start cutting programs, funding for programs, who do you think is going to get cut? Texas with 2 senators and 36 representatives, or Guam with no senator and no voting representative? We're going to see reductions. You have to deal with reality. And you need to start planning for the reality, because if the worst case scenario happens and there are no reductions from the federal government and there are no decreases in tourism, then you'll probably have enough money to pay off the operating deficit we've accumulated over the past 5 years. But if these projections come true, if tourism drops, if federal funding, which is about 1/3 of the government's revenue, drops, what are you going to do? I can tell you what you're going to do. You're going to say, oh, we need to raise the business privilege tax to 6%. We need to raise all the government fees by 10%. And the people of Guam just can't afford it. We're already losing people. Probably at the rate of 10 to 15 households a month are leaving Guam. And it's because they're looking for places with more opportunities and a better quality of life that they're not finding here on Guam. You guys set the policy. You guys write the check. Do it as if you were writing the check out of your own pockets instead of ours. And then maybe, just maybe, we'll see some sanity return to this budgeting process. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. Mr. Leon-Guerrero. Does any of my colleagues have any questions? Thank you, Ken.